Hello and welcome to my basic Ivy guide. In this video I will be showing how to use Ivy in this opening here, and then also going over her stats, her pros and cons, what she's good at, and so on. So here we can see her doing my standard Lucina Bond flyer shield strat, where she's able to hold a position, deal tons of damage to a lot of enemies, and basically solo, well not really solo, but like duo some maps and deal substantial damage. So all I have to do to block off this position is just park two flyers here that are fast enough to not get doubled, which both of these flyers are, and then just use Bonded Shield. And Ivy is exceptional with this tactic because she has decent magic and is a flyer. So her Void Grasp is pretty good for this sort of thing, and if you give her Bolganon with an accuracy upgrade, she basically never misses. Common arguments put forth that I've seen, like about Ivy, are that she can't really do too much. She can't hit very accurately, but all you have to do is engrave her Bolganon, and she'll be one-rounding things. You can leave Lyn on her, and this is a really good use of Lyn. She'll just immediately be a hard carry with minimal effort. And I'll just finish this little section here. You can get an idea of how strong she is. So Lucina Bonded Shield enables this sort of strategy where huge volumes of enemies can't really mess with you, and because she's using high damage magic, most enemies attacking her will be susceptible to her damage. So as this archer attacks her, thinking archer is her weakness, but in reality, she can counterattack them with Bonded Shield, or even just run up to them point blank and dive them. She's a pretty strong unit, definitely worth the investment. I think it helps to show how the unit can be insane before diving into the tutorial, but now that I've shown that, let's go over her growth rates. Ivy's bases are 55% health growth, 25% strength, 30% magic, 25% dex, 40% speed, 30% defense, 35% res, 15% luck, and 10% build. Now on her personal class, she only gets slight increases, so on Wing Tamer, she gets plus 5% more HP, plus 20% more magic, plus 10% more defense, plus 20% more res. And then on Lindworm, her advanced class, she gets 5% more HP, 25% more magic, 5% more dex, 15% more defense, and 25% res. And she also comes in at level 17. You get her at the end of chapter 11. And her bases are pretty decent, and when you upgrade her, she tends to be a decent single-hitting mage. But with Lyn, and eventually once you get speed plus 3, which takes 5 seconds of unlocking Lyn Bond level 5 on her, post-chapter 11, she tends to start doubling things, and if you leave Lyn on her, it tends to allow her to deal pretty good damage. Now her passive of Single-Minded makes it so that if she had an opponent previously, like whoever her most recent opponent is, she gets hit plus 20 against them. So this is really useful against bosses that have multiple health bars, against enemies that she attacks and hits for good damage but can't one run because she can't double them. Then you can dance her to increase her hit rate. This is especially decent against like Sword Masters and Wolf Knights, because if you engrave her weapon with an accuracy increase, she usually hits it, and this just pushes the accuracy rate up. But it's also good because if you do enemy phase Lucina Bonded Shield tanking, you can just pay attention to who your most recent opponent was, and this will increase your accuracy. So it's a decent passive. It's definitely not going to carry her kit, but it does help. And her other unique from Lindworm is Grasping Void. This is a very strong ability because it just scales your damage, and the trigger equals her dex, which on average is around like 20 or so. So the trigger rate is roughly 1 in 5, and it can also trigger on enemy phase. So if you are using a Bonded Shield strat, this can trigger, like if 5 enemies attack you, it's very likely going to trigger in that situation. Let's talk about pros and cons of the unit. So for very little effort, you get a decent mage who has access to B rank staves and flying. She also has pretty good damage output and an interesting, unique kit, and generally can tank things that aren't effective against flyers, provided her speed is high enough to not get doubled, and it's not too difficult to get her speed up. She generally does want Lin and speed passive, and with those, she usually doesn't have that many problems. She also usually wants an upgraded, like an engraved accuracy tome to compensate for her kind of lower accuracy. Earlier on, her accuracy isn't a problem, but like late game, her accuracy can hit like 70 to 80 hit rate. So that's like one of the major cons. Another con is the fact that she's on flyer, and if you're not used to playing around flyer's weaknesses, then she'll be getting shot down. So that's true of any flyer, though. So overall, I would say the pros outweigh the cons substantially so. And then for level of investment, definitely low. All you have to do is use a Master Seal on her and just leave Lin on her. Like, you don't even have to change her emblem ring, and she'll just be fine. And if you want to increase her speed, you can. You know, she starts with 1,000 SP, I believe. So you just immediately get her speed +3. Or no, it might be 1,200. Might even be 1,200. It's either 1,000 or 1,200, but she has over 1,000 SP starting, and you can just get her speed +3 pretty quickly. You just unlock bond level 5 on Lin for 400 bond fragments, which is pretty easy to obtain. Then you can also get her mentorship by chapter, like at the end of chapter 15. Or I'm sorry, chapter 14. Just to start leveling her faster. But getting her up and running, pretty easy to do. Not that difficult to do. All right, so for best classes, I would say it's just magic classes. I think her best class is her unique class, Lindworm, because it gives her access to decent rank staves and flying, which if you look at some other things, let's go to like Sage, for example. It actually is probably up here. Sage. There we go. All right, so Sage basically is the same as this class, except it has one less build. It does have 2 more speed and more dex. It has 1 less magic, but this is a flying class, so you get S rank on tomes and you get B rank on staves, but you get a flying frame and more build, which definitely helps. But obviously the speed increase on Sage would be decent. She makes a good Sage. I would say Sage and Lindworm are her main classes, both of which are fine. Mage Knight would be a good option for her for increasing her speed. Mage Knight actually increases speed growth by 5%, but it also increases base speed by quite a lot and gives you the Chaos style ability, which increases your speed by 3 when you're attacking mismatched things. So if you're on magic, even if it's a magic like Levin Sword or something like that, and you're attacking an enemy physical unit who has like a physical weapon, like a bow or a sword, you know, that's not magical, you will hit +3 speed. And then you can also switch to sword or lance or whatever, like a physical sword, and then smack a mage and gain +3 speed that way. So she has the potential to bypass res enemies on Mage Knight and basically deal okay damage. Whereas if you were to hit them with magic, it probably would deal significantly less damage, not really one-round them. So Mage Knight is a good flexible, fast option. Sage is a good grounded unit that has better hit rates and overall slightly better speed, because you lose a build, which only matters if your tome weight is low. But if you're running Bolganon, losing a build is the same as losing 1 speed. So Sage is good, Mage Knight is good, Lindworm is good. Griffin Knight has some potential. You would basically just use Levin Sword on her and go for damage on Levin Sword. Now, the speed would be huge, and she probably would consistently double even without Lin, so that is an option for her. Her magic does go down on Griffin Knight, but this also gives her access to other things, like physical swords, so you could actually whack things for some damage, not like a ton. 14 strength is probably enough to whack enemy mages, which is what you'd be using it for, and the high speed would allow her to do this, so Griffin Knight would be a decent option as well. Anything that isn't magical, I don't recommend, because her main growths are in magic. Now, it is possible she could become something like a Martial Master, because she does have 25% strength and 30% magic, which would potentially make her a decent Martial Master. I'm trying Martial Master out right now on Chloe, and so far it's not popping off, but maybe with more investment it does. Her 10% build growth is also nice for her base class, because eventually she'll start getting more points of build. Now, it's good on any class, really, so she could be a decent Sage and Mage Knight. I would say those are her main classes. Anything physical, like you could put her on physical things, but she's not going to be the best physical attacker, just due to her like base strength. So I would just skip all of it and just put her on something magical. So that's it for classes. So early passives. So basically there are no early passives because you get her mid game. So best passives for her, I think, are speed. Get speed +3 immediately, and then mentorship immediately, and then eventually you want to get speed +4, and then speed +5, just to scale her speed. You can run Canter on her, but if you use Bondage Shield, you won't need it really, but it can be nice to have, so Canter could replace mentorship long term. Mentorship is good throughout an entire run if you don't mind not having Canter, because it just scales your unit's level. It also gives you more SP. You could also unlock Speed Taker on her and then not run Lin on her if you want. That's a potential thing. You'd have to save up some SP for around 8 level ups on an emblem ring. So you might as well keep Lin on her and then level her up so many times, and then just unlock Speed Taker and then switch Lin off of her, and then also probably get speed +3 eventually. So I'd say most of it revolves around speed. There's no, as far as I know, there's no like tome damage thing, right? There's like tome precision, and then there's magic increase from Celica, and it's expensive, like increasing magic through passives. So I'd say speed, mentorship, Canter, these sorts of things. Canter, you get back chapter 17 at the end of it, so it's not going to be something you get to run a lot until you hit almost the end of middle game. Good equipment. I would say this. I should have an Elf under, but Bolganon. So take her Elfire, upgrade it to Bolganon, then put this engraving on it, and it reduces the weight by 1. It reduces the damage by 1, but it also increases the accuracy. So her hit rates are never going to be bad on this. And then also run an Elfire. The Elfire you can use when you can't double things, because the Elfire is much lighter. It's not that much lighter though. You can see the difference is negligible. And as she levels up and gets more build from her 10%, which she usually gets 20 to 30 level ups for me just by using her in general, she will get +2 to 3 build that'll offset Bolganon. Then you can just drop the Elfire. She's also good with Excalibur. Thoron is good to run on her. And then of course you can run Physic and Heal. And honestly, I think she just needs Bolganon, and then the rest is up to you. I don't even think she needs like a 3 range tome. She's usually good enough to just like straight up duel things because she's durable enough. And the only thing that really poses a problem would be like Excalibur mages, which there aren't that many of. Elwyn mages sometimes can one-round her, but if she's fast enough to not get doubled, they usually can't. So she can usually just straight up tank those. But yeah, that's it for those. And then for early emblem rings, I'd say just leave her on Lin. Like when you get her, you have Lin and Lucina, and then you get Ike, and then you get Byleth, and then you get Corrin. Of those, Lin is her best option because it increases her speed and pushes her into doubling range, and on a flying frame, being able to double is huge. She also can use warp and rewarp. So a lot of people kind of default putting Hortensia into S tier just because she can warp and rewarp on a flying frame. And Hortensia gets +1 more range, but if you ran Micaiah on Ivy, she would basically be able to single hit really hard with Bolganon and put good damage on things, which is something Hortensia struggles with. But also she could warp and rewarp just like Hortensia. Micaiah increases your staff range. Hortensia does get +1 range, but Ivy can do the same things Hortensia can do, just like with more damage and slightly less effectiveness for staff use. And by slightly less, I mean like 10% less. You know, one point of move more versus it's a difference of teleporting someone like 11 tiles versus 10. It's still very far. But yeah, that's it for this one. Very strong unit. Highly recommend running her. Even with low investment, she's an A tier. Like if you take her emblem ring off, I'd say she's like an A tier. With normal, like basic investment, she's an S tier easily. Very strong unit. Always performs for me. Can do pretty much anything you want her to, and more. All right, so that's it for this one. Definitely like and subscribe if you enjoyed this or found this useful. Feel free to drop a comment if you have any interesting builds for her, because I'm always interested in seeing those, and I'll see you next one.